68b. Okay, we're right in the middle, so I guess I'll do a brief review, and we'll continue going. Okay, what this discussion we were in the middle of was the question of Shneim Einen Yechel Lahaktish Zeh B'Shvil She'ein Shaloi V'Zeh B'Shvil She'ein V'Rshusei. The idea here is that if a robber steals your thing, even though you maintain ownership until either Yush or potentially Shinoi, either Shinoi or potentially Yush, right? Yush, we said, is machlokes. Shinoi is basically universal except for Beis Shammai. It moves the ownership into the domain of the thief. Until that point, it's owned by the original owner. So therefore, yesterday we suggested the possibility that maybe the original owner should be able to be makdash it. He should be able to sanctify it while even though he doesn't control it, it's in the domain of the robber. But because he owns it, he should be able to give it to the temple fund. He can give it to Hektish. Hektish is the temple fund. So the Gemara said there was a machlokes here between the tznuim, the modest ones, and hold on. Yeah. The modest group, what they call the tznuim, they held that you are able to sanctify something even before it is not before, even when the item is not in your control. For example, if something is under the control of the thief because he stole it, you can still sanctify it. And that was the opinion of the tznuim. However, the mainstream opinion was that of Rabbi Yehudah, which is that you cannot. If an item is stolen from you, the fact that you lost control impacts your ownership sufficiently to prevent you from donating it to Hektish. Okay. Now we're at Very Chazra Karen Labailam.
What page is that?
5 lines from the bottom of the page, third to last word on the line. 68b.
Okay.
Now, the Gemara brought a brisa that says that if you what happened was a guy stole an animal, and according to the resolution of the Gemara, the original owner sanctified it afterwards. And then the guy slaughtered it. So again, the thief steals an animal, the owner sanctifies the animal, he donates it to Hektish, the temple fund, as a sacrifice, and then the thief slaughters the animal. So we say you don't pay dollar v'hei because at the time of dollar v'hei it belonged to Hektish, and we said the Hektish is valid, even though it's not in his control because of the opinion of the tznuim, the modest ones. But he does have to pay kefil. There's just one fundamental problem here. Let's say we presume the donation is valid. Now the animal is donated to Hektish, right? Who donated it to Hektish? The owner, right? Not the thief, the owner. In effect, the owner has taken back what was stolen. In other words, the fact that he took a stolen item and gave it to Hektish, he's gotten it back. So why does he even pay kefil? The principal has already gone back to the original owners.
The owner pay kefil?
Not the owner. The thief pays. The thief pays double. Why does he pay double? If the owner is able to give it as a donation, for example, let's say imagine a thief comes to my house and steals my minivan.
And you sell your minivan.
And then I donated the cars to kids.
You donate.
And a truck comes up to the thief's house and picks up the car and takes it away. In a certain sense, I got my car back, right?
But the thief still stole.
Yeah, it's true, but I took it back.
The thief still stole. What's the incentive?
I agree with
for the
you.
thief not to
He
do
did
it?
he did steal, but I never was able to take him to court over his thievery. Kafel is a payment that the court has. It's penalty, right? We said it's a penalty payment, so you have to go to court to collect it. But I can't go to court now because my car is in Cars for Kids lot. You know. Okay. So the Gemara says, no, what happened was Kashama Bedin. We went to court before I donated the ox to Hektish. By the way, there is a difference here because by the Cars for Kids, the tow truck actually came and took my car. Although over here, Hektish owns it wherever it is. It doesn't make a difference if it's actually still under control of the thief. It's still not mine anymore. It belongs to Hektish. So the Gemara says, what happened was I went to court with the thief before I donated it to Hektish. Then the court said, okay, you have to pay him kefil. They told the thief, you have to pay me, the original owner, you have to pay the principal, the stolen item, plus kefil. So I said, okay, well, the principal, that's a sacrifice. And now give me the kefil.
So that's essentially the punishment for stealing.
Standard punishment, right.
Yeah.
However, because so the Gemara says, hey, Chidami, what's the scenario? Ida Amrit say tenloi. If the court ruled that the guy is guilty and has to go pay, so my area hektish, I feel loy hektish nami lo lechayev. Okay, so now here's the catch. So let's say the court rules in my favor. They say, okay, go pay principal plus kefil. Then, even if I did not sanctify it, and let's say in a regular scenario, the robber steals my car. Sorry, the robber steals my ox. We go to court. Court says, got to pay plus one, right? Kefil. And then the guy slaughters the animal. There's no dollar of hay. Because at that point, in the court order, it's a financial obligation. Potter. My time, I'm keeping the paskul and miltza tovach machar have the gazlan. The gazlan in mishal tashlim rav kamishim. Sorry, I gave the wrong reason. The reason is as follows. Now we know who the thief was, right? We said the critical feature of a thief is that he steals at nighttime. But if there's a court order against the guy that says you owe the original ox that was stolen plus kefil, right? And now the guy says, "Oh, too bad, I'm not paying, and I'm slaughtering your animal." Now he's a gazlan, he's a mugger, right? Daytime thief, and a gazlan doesn't pay dollar v'hei. Okay. However, there is a slightly different scenario. We're in the top now of first word of Samach Testament Aleph, 69a. Let's say the court says to him, Chayiv atalitin loy tovach umacham shalom shloim baruch hamisha. So the actual resolution here is going to be as follows: where the court told him, the court basically declared him guilty. They didn't require him to pay it. So you can think of this as, I guess, maybe an analog in the American system would be that there is often two stages in a trial, right? There's the guilty, not guilty verdict, and then there's the question of, okay, so what's the penalty? What's the sentence? Right. So over here, they declare the guy guilty, but they did not execute the penalty yet. In the sense, they didn't require him. They didn't obligate him to pay both payments. And because of that, loy paskel milsa, it's not considered a separate component yet. At this point, it's not considered he's not considered a gazlan for disobeying the court because the court hasn't issued a penalty order. Akati ganafu. So the Gemara says, okay, okay, so if that's the case, then the resolution to explain this Gemara is that the court told him you're guilty, but they didn't make him pay it. And therefore, there would be dalad v'hei, if not for the fact that the owner turned it into hektish, and therefore, because the owner turned it into hektish, the guy slaughtered the animal of hektish, and therefore there's no dalad v'hei. But because they did go to trial, so therefore the guy still owes him kefil, even though the guy sort of took back his own animal by donating it to hektish.
Then he's got the other problem of slaughtering hektish.
Yeah, true, true. And so it depends. If it was an animal that was eligible for a sacrifice, so then even if he did kachya v'nikabayis, it would actually go to kachya gavaya. There's two temple funds. There is a temple fund for building basically any financial arrangement. You can imagine a temple has all sorts of financial components. There's any financial question, and then there's sacrifices or finances associated with sacrifice, which is the same thing. If you donate a sacrificially eligible animal to the temple fund, it actually automatically goes to a sacrifice. You can't do it basically. You can donate a horse to the temple, and that will be used in, maybe the temple needs a horse to send messages, or maybe they'll sell it and they'll use the money for wood or plumbing fees, whatever it is. That's one type of donation. If you donate an ox that's fit for sacrifice, then the ox will be brought as a sacrifice, and therefore you'd have the problem either of Ma'al B'Hekdesh, if it was financial, or Shchutei Chutz, if it was actually sacrifice.
You're saying the robber has to both slaughter the animal and pay kafel.
No, so if he has to pay kafel because he went to court.
Right. Yeah.
Although technically speaking, now he will not give the animal back to the owner; he'll give it to the temple,
right,
or maybe to the owner to bring to the temple. Either way, but it doesn't belong to the owner anymore. He sanctified it. However, if he slaughters it, normally if you slaughter an animal after you steal it, specifically an ox or sheep, then you pay dal v'hei for 4 sheep, 5 oxen. But in this scenario, he will not pay 4 or 5 because he slaughtered an animal that belongs to Hekdesh. Top of Samach Tes Amid Aleph at the 2 dots, 4 lines down. Gufa, original statement. And this is really the big discussion today. And we meet a couple of our old friends, including Mr. B. Gufa, Amr Rav Yechanan. Rav Yechanan says, Gazav v'lenis yaishra b'aylam. The robber steals it. The owner has not given up on it. Shneim einin yechayim lahakdesh. Zel lefi she'ein shaloi, v'zel lefi she'ein b'rshusay. Okay. You have a stolen item. The owner has not given up on the stolen item. Both the robber and the owner cannot sanctify the item. Why not? The owner cannot because it's not in his control. The robber cannot because he doesn't own it. So the Gemara says, okay, does that make sense together? Okay. Not so fast.
Direct contradiction to what we just went through.
So we were talking about in Rish Lakish's opinion.
Right.
So there was a debate between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yechanan themselves. 1 second. Just one second. Yes. Rish Lakish said Yesh Kaina.
Right.
And along with that, Rish Lakish was forced to the conclusion of the Tznuim. He was forced to the conclusion of the Tznuim that says that you could sanctify an animal when it's not in your control. However, Rabbi Yechanan said Yish is not kaina, and Yish alone is not kaina, and therefore you cannot. And he is not obliged to be forced in the position that's doing. Okay, now let's just make this point clear, though. Again, according to Rish Lakish, Yish alone means the thief is the owner. According to Rabbi Yechanan, Yish does not make the thief the owner. However, Yish combined with Hekdesh would make Hekdesh the owner. That would be called Yish plus Shini Rishus. Changing the domain, and then they were really, everybody agrees. That's how it's possible to sell it. The owner gives up on claiming it from the thief. The thief sells it, and the buyer actually acquires it. So Gemara says, did Rabbi Yechanan say that both the thief and the owner cannot sanctify the animal? Rabbi Yechanan says, halacha stam mishnah. The halacha follows a stam mishnah. Which now we learned karam revai. Okay, the fruit that grows from a tree. First 3 years we call that arla, right? You cannot eat that. In chutz outside of Israel, if you know the tree must be less than 3 years old, it is also prohibited to eat it. In Israel, in addition to the 3 years, is the 4th year called karam revai, or neta revai. Karam is a vineyard, neta is a tree. The 4th year of a vineyard, the fruit is eaten in Jerusalem. So karam revai mitzayin oisei b'kezuzes adamo. They would store it in how do they translate kezuzes? It seems like they
vineyard,
what was that.
40-year vineyard.
Yeah, no, but they would put it kzuzes adama. It appears to be they used to put mud around the
They would mark
borders.
it with clouds of earth.
Yeah, they put mud around the borders of these vines to identify them. Simona, it's a symbol. Why? Ki adama, ma adama ika hanamine. Afayna making mefarka sharilas is hanuyamina. Just like the ground, you can benefit from it. Once you redeem the Kerem Ravai, to redeem it, meaning you can redeem it for money and bring that money to Jerusalem instead. Then you'd be permitted to derive the benefits from it. Vishal Orla, but with young trees that were Orla the first 3 years, you'd use charosas. You'd use these broken pottery shards. Simona ki charosas, ma charosas she'en hanamine, afhai lesbe hanamine. Just like broken shards, you don't derive benefit from. So too, Orla, you can't derive benefits. Vishal kvaris, and when you were marking grave sites, besid, you use plaster. Why? Simona the chiver katzamas. Its plaster is white like bones. And you spread out the plaster so that it's whiter. It's it's more of a surface area that's covered in white. Amr Shimon Gamliel, Medvar Mimur B'Shvius Tehefgrininu. Al Bashar Shei Shavua Halitei Rosh of Yamas. So Shimon Gamliel says this is only true on Shemitah. Why? Because on Shemitah you have foreigners entering your fields, right? You have to open your field to the public, so they come to take their produce. They need to know which ones not to take. So you mark it off. This is Arlo. This is Shvius. But if it's a regular year, the guy's a thief. What's he doing? He's trespassing. What's he doing in your fields? You don't have to accommodate him by letting the robber know which one is Kerem Rafai. Kali Taylor Russian. The Yomas you pour to the you pour to the wicked and let him die. Okay, that's Nuin. Okay, the same modest people again. What would they do? Menichan es amois v'ayim kol anilkim izeh mechol amois halolo. One second. The modest people, what they would do is they would set aside funds, and they would say that these funds should redeem the fruits of Kerem Rafai that are taken by the robbers, by the people stealing in the fields. Now, in order for the redemption to work, the people have to steal it. But the problem is, how can you redeem it if it was stolen? We said you cannot sanctify a stolen item because it's not in your domain. It's not in your reshus. It's not under your control. Over here, once the item was pulled off the tree by a thief, it's not in your control. How can you redeem it? Clearly, the Tznuin disagree with Rav Yechanan. Even though Rav Yechanan says the halacha follows a stam mishnah, an unauthored mishnah. So it seems to have a contradiction here. The chitem, and if you'll say man tan Tznuin or Shimon Gamliel, you'll tell me that who are the Tznuin, Rav Shimon Gamliel, and Rav Shimon and Rav Yechanan was not talking about an anonymous stam mishnah that's actually an individual opinion. He was talking about an unauthored mishnah that was consensus. And if you'll tell me that this mishnah is unauthored, but it's according to one opinion, a single opinion, that's not included in Rabbi Yechanan's statement. Okay, the problem with saying this is an extension of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's statement is that actually the halacha always follows Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. So if Shimon Gamliel is the unauthored person behind the Mishnah, the halacha follows him anyway. In other words, even though it's not followed under the principle of an anonymous Mishnah, we do follow him under the principle of halacha of Shimon Gamliel. The law follows of Shimon Gamliel, except for 3 instances. Arav is a guarantor that's signed after the signature of the creditor and debtor and witnesses. So he signed underneath them, meaning he was added later. Tzidain is let me just remember this. This is in the Gemara in Gittin. This was the story of Tzidain. We are can't remember the exact specifics. Okay, and Rayach Roina basically is when the court gives you a certain time period to bring proofs. If you
It's where a get that was given. There's a dispute between Shimon Rabbi Gamliel and Tana Kamma concerning a get that was given in the city of Sidon.
right, what was the dispute about? You saying?
Sorry?
Did you say what the dispute about
No,
what it was
it
about?
74.
I don't remember that. I don't. I looked it up, but I can't remember offhand. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was the debate. Okay, and Rayach Roina is basically they tell you you have this amount of time to bring any additional proof. Once the time has passed, you can't add to your court case. Also, debate with Rishon Gamliel and the rabbis, and it remains inconclusive. Halacha does not follow Rishon Gamliel. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Amri lo tema kol hanilkat mizeh, el ema kol hamislakat mizeh." Okay, so what happened was that Snuin would not redeem after the fact; they would redeem it before the fact. They'd come every morning. They'd say that which would be picked, right? Everyone's thinking about Mr. B now, Brera here, right? This is a Brera situation. We'll get to Brera. I'll explain in a moment. That which will be picked should be redeemed now before it's picked. Not, well, anything that was picked today should be redeemed because that you can't do. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Can Rabbi Yochanan say that we're talking about the past, what happened in the past?" Snuin v'Rab Daisa Amar Davar Echad. Okay, the Snuin, the modest ones, and Rav Daisa said the same thing. So let me just let's just review this quickly for a second. Again, what is the scenario of Snuin? It's about Kerem Ravoy, right? Kerem Ravoy is the fourth year produce that must be eaten in Jerusalem. Okay, now obviously these thieves stealing not during the Shemitah year, right? They're in somebody else's property stealing things. And because the modest people care about these people not stealing and not eating something they should not be eating otherwise, so they redeem it for them. They redeem it onto money. The next scenario is about leket. Leket is the rule that when you're cutting wheat, if you miss 2 stalks of grain, then that goes to the poor people. 3 stalks is owned by the original owner. It's one of the gifts that are given to the poor people. I guess this is before the days of the combine, right? Everything was done by hand, and frequently there would be a stalk or 2 that would fall down, and that stalk or 2 would be for the. Basically, if you want to think of it practically speaking, what you could think of it is a field of wheat was chopped down. There was still wheat strewn everywhere because not every single grain was, and most of that can be collected by the poor, except if there are 3 stalks in one unit that cannot be collected by the poor. Okay. Rav Daisa Nilka Kamar, and Rav Daisa was talking about that which was already cut. In other words, we tried to change the story of the tznu, the modest ones, that instead of their redemption happening post facto, it happened before the fact. Rav Daisa clearly says it happened post facto in a similar situation. The Tanya we learn in the Brayser. Rabbi Yehudah Aimer Shachris Balabais Aimid v'Aimer Kol Sheyuktu Aniyim Hayomi Hefker. Every morning, the owner says that would. Okay, so now we explained the laws of leket. Just one problem with these laws. So 2 of them, right, is kept by the poor. 3 is kept by the owner. The problem is that people often make mistakes, and the poor people are not so familiar with the law, and it happens every now and then that a poor person takes that which doesn't belong to him. So we tell the owner of the field, or according to Rabbi Yehudah, we tell the owner of the field, every morning you should make a proclamation and say that which will be taken by mistake is hefker, it's ownerless. And Rav Daisa says, no, you make the proclamation at the end of the day. Rav Daisa Amar Itaisi Erev, at the end of the day, Amar Kol Shaloktu Aniyim Yehei Hefker. That which was taken by the poor is ownerless. Okay, so clearly this indicates to us that the statement is a post facto statement. And this contradicts the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan says that you cannot sanctify that which doesn't belong to you. And over here we're saying that you could. You can redeem it when it's not in your control, or you can make an ownerless when it's not in your control. How does that work? So the Gemara says, Eipach Rav Yehudah Rav Daisa. Switch around Rav Yehudah and Rav Daisa. Rav Yehudah says after the fact, Rav Daisa says before the fact. And therefore the tznu and the modest ones were also saying before the fact, and therefore the tznu and Rav Daisa do not contradict Rav Yochanan. We together? Okay, so the Gemara says, "Amai afkas masnisan afkal Rabbi Yochanan." The emet snuin for Rabbi Yehudah amar davar achat. 1 second. Why are we saying that Rav Doisa and we're switching around both Rav Doisa and Rav Yochanan, and we're switching around the Tznuin statement? Why don't we say instead that the Tznuin actually are the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah, which the halacha does not follow? And you don't have to. In other words, it's Tznuin that say post facto is like Rabbi Yehudah that says post facto. You don't have. Why are we switching around both the Mishnah and the Brisa? Both Brises, I'm sorry. When you can just say that it's like Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. So the Gemara says, "Amri lo sagil mishabcha masnisa." The bahab masnisa ketani the islay Rabbi Yehudah breira, Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Yehudah ma'alma the leslay breira. Rabbi Yehudah, regardless, is problematic. Rabbi Yehudah cannot say that the owner you make it ownerless before they picked it. Why? Because that's effectively breira. What is breira? Quick reminder: breira is hufur hadavar l'afreya. Breira is where I create a situation on a condition that will be fulfilled at a later time. Right? So classical example of breira would be I am taking off trumas and ma'asers here to be decided at a later point. I'll decide where the trumas and ma'asers come from. So you think a guy has a big barrel of wine, he wants a drink. He doesn't want to take off trumas and ma'asers yet. So he says, I'm taking off this that I will separate trumas and ma'asers at a later point in time. It's taken off now already, wherever it is.
But that has to do with his actions, not the actions of the thief, right? His actions of, right?
All right. Well, explain in a moment.
Okay.
So he takes a sip from the barrel of wine, and where is the trumas and ma'asers? Somewhere in the barrel. At a week later, he comes to the barrel. He says, "Okay, this glass of wine is the truma that I was referring to a week ago. This glass of wine is ma'aser. This is the trumas ma'aser." He spills out all the wine, or gives it to the kohen, whatever it is, and everything is fine. That would be an example of breira. Over here, making something ownerless, which will be determined by the thieves later in the day, that is breira. I'm making an action today that will be specified at a later point in time.
You don't know which specific.
You don't know which ones they're going to pick.
You don't know if they are going to pick.
Also true.
Yeah.
So this is breira. The problem is Rabbi Yehudah does not hold a breira. If Rabbi Yehudah doesn't hold a breira, then you can't, before the fact, make things ownerless. How do we know Rabbi Yehudah doesn't hold a breira? The Tanami, so we've seen this Gemara quite a few times together. He buys wine from Jews who don't keep the laws of taking off trumas and ma'asers. So what does he do? But it's right before Shabbos, so he needs the wine on Shabbos. So he can't, and he doesn't have time to take off trumas and ma'asers. So what does he say? Shnei lugat shani as lahafer sharein trumas ma'aser. Sharein truma asar ma'aser rishon tes ma'aser sheni umechel b'shoysim miyad. Basically, you say that which I will take off truma in the future should be taken off now. I'll specify it in a week, or I'll specify it on Sunday. And v'shoysim miyad, he can drink immediately. Divrei Rameir, it's the opinion of Rameir. Rav Yehudah, Rabbi Yossi, Rav Shimon, Eisher. Rabbi Yehudah, Rabbi Yossi, Rav Shimon say you can't do this. Okay, so clearly Rav Yehudah, we have to switch around Rav Yehudah's statement, and that's why Rav Yochanan says Rav Doisa is like the Tznuin, and they're both talking about before the fact. Rav Yehudah doesn't hold a breira. Rav Yochanan does hold a breira. So Amri, so we say, well, the response is not complete yet. Why? Safe. Okay, well, now we're running into another problem. So we're saying that Rav Yochanan holds a breira, right? Why does Rabbi Yochanan hold a breira? Because Rabbi Yochanan holds you cannot redeem, make ownerless, or sanctify that which is not on your control. But the halacha follows this Snuin's opinion, the modest people's opinion, which says you could do that. You could redeem something. So what must we say? We must say that that's a scenario of breira, actually. It's not a scenario of making something hektish, of redeeming something that isn't in your control, because that which is happening at the end of the day, that which was picked should be redeemed. Instead, it's happening at the beginning of the day. That which will be picked, that will be redeemed now at the beginning of the day. That's breira. So we're substituting the rule of the limitation of making something hektish when it's not under your control for the laws of breira. But the problem is Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold a breira. The Amr Rabbi Yochanan 1 second. The Amr Rabbi Yochanan that which will be picked. That which will be picked in the morning for what will be done during the whole day. Alma is brera. He holds a brera. Rabbi Yochanan less brera. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold a brera. The Amar Vasi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Without going into too much detail, but splitting up an estate, when you split up an estate, the sons are considered buyers. What does that mean? That means there's two ways to look at dividing an estate. One is to say that this was the portion that I actually inherited. In other words, according to what was divided, I got the portion that my portion assigned to me was what actually my inheritance was. That would be an example of brera. But if you treat them as buyers, that means it's sort of consensus post facto, then that's not brera. It's just an agreement that we determined later. What did I inherit? I don't know. Nobody knows. But the consensus is that we're going to sort of agree to this type of division. The difference here is whether after every yovel, every 50 years, we have to redo the division. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, you do because there's no such thing as brera. Sorry?
Because of Shemitah? The 50-year thing? Or no, sorry.
No, Shemitah is 7 years. Yovel's 50 years. But there were only, again, like I mentioned in the past, I think there were only 6 or 7 Yovels.
Yeah.
There's a lot about Yovel, but there haven't been many Yovels. Yovel was only in effect for a short period during the time of the first temple. So the first temple was 410 years, but already once a lot of the Jews went into exile, they stopped being, they stopped Yovel. Okay. So the Gemara says, "El olam kol nilkat." You're right. We're talking about that which was picked. Okay. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold a brera. The Tznuin and Rav Daisa are talking about that which was picked. Now we have another kind. So basically we said, okay, Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold a brera. It's not the Gemara is not talking about brera. Fine. Now what's the problem? The problem is Rabbi Yochanan contradicts himself. Rabbi Yochanan says the halacha seems to follow the Tznuin because Tznuin is an unauthored Mishnah, anonymous Mishnah. And Rabbi Yochanan says, well, actually, you cannot make it ownerless at the end of the day because it's not in your control. So Gemara says, no, it's not a problem because Rabbi Yochanan has a different Stam Mishnah. It's not in the Mishnah says, if you steal from a thief, you don't pay kefil. Amai. Why not? Okay, so again, there's 3 people, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon steals from Reuven, Levi steals from Shimon. So I get it. Shimon never owned it. Levi doesn't have to pay Shimon kefil. That makes sense. But why doesn't Levi have to pay Reuven kefil? Because it's still owned by Reuven. Hear the question? It must be Zelafisha Ena Shaloy, Zelafisha Ena B'Shusay, because it's not on the control of Reuven, therefore is exempt from paying kefil to Reuven, which actually supports the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay. Okay, so now we have 2 Stam Mishnahs that contradict each other. The Tznuin disagree with the concept of Zelafisha and Shalai. They say the fact that something is not in your control does not prevent you from making it ownerless. And Rabbi Yochanan says it does prevent you from making it ownerless, hektish, or redeeming it. So the Tznuim, the modest people, they are redeeming, or according to Rav Daisa, they are making ownerless at the end of the day, when the item is not in their control. And they're allowing you to do that.
I thought their opinion was they want it done at the beginning of the day.
But we had to reject that because then we'd have contradiction of brera. So then we went back to the end of the day. The end of the day clearly indicates that they disagree with Rabbi Yochanan's statement. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan says you're right, they disagree with me, and they're not a Stam Mishnah, because I have a different Stam Mishnah. Fine. Why? Well, you have 2 Stam Mishnahs. Okay, so which one is correct? Why do you choose one over the other, effectively? So the Gemara says, Mishun the Messiah like Krah, because the verse supports him. The ish ki yakdish es beitzei kodesh l'Hashem ma beitzei b'reshusei av kol b'reshusei. You sanctify your house, sanctify to God, just like your house is in your control. By the way, you can't steal property, right? Obviously, you can't load it onto a truck and carry it away. Therefore, effectively, property is always in your control. Even if you're not sitting on the property, it doesn't impugn on your ability to make it hektish. Okay. So therefore, so too movable items also have to be under your control. Okay, what time is Shachar today? Is it 45 or 50?
Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. Okay. Okay. This is the wrong place to stop. Okay. Tomorrow I'll have to review the whole Gemara again, because this next Gemara goes back and forth, summarizing everything we learned today and a little bit of yesterday as well.
That's what happened.
Okay. Have a great day.